Yeah, how do I break the habit of excessive thinking? Yes, how to. How to. So first up, I'm going to give an interpretation from non-duality's perspective as to why excessive thinking happens. And yeah, and then from that, we'll explore the subject. So at a very young age, maybe prior to actually being born, maybe in previous lives, something begins called a separate self. And this separate self is a belief that you exist. And it's a mental functioning that happens simultaneously with the ability to have complex language. I doubt that this happens without complex language. I doubt that separation is happening in animals. I know that in Buddhism and Hinduism, the animals are like the lowest life form, and you've got to overcome being an animal. And if you do badly in this life, then you're going to be reborn as a dung beetle. And I don't mean to seem like some narcissistic folk that's like, no, that's a load of bull crap. You can't get reborn as a dung beetle because they're on a lower spectrum than humanity. I don't mean to go against millions of years of religion that have created these stories. But I tend to be a bit unromantic like that in my teaching. Although I do believe in past lives, but not in past lives like we imagine it. But I don't believe that animals are on a lower sphere than us, because I think it's way more impersonal than that. Like who would be somebody that would be reborn into an animal? I see past lives of habits and conditions that are passed on through humanity. Yeah. But anyway, that's a really complex subject that we don't need to go into now. But anyway, back to what I was saying, at some point, humans developed separation. I suspect it developed slowly through the use of language. As soon as we started using language, so there is an identification with language. As soon as language forms, there is a somebody that is in relationship with somebody else or something else. So it forms, and it's like, we can't say the river unless we have a point, a perspective in which we're speaking about it from. So the river is something in time and space. It's like the river. Maybe if we just name things a bit impersonally like that, it's easier, but it's normally like, I'm walking to the river. And who is this I? As soon as, like, can you imagine like cave people when they started to speak, they're like, I'm going to the river. And then they're suddenly confused. Oh, me? And then they've got to make up a me. Whereas Khaleesi, this is the dog that was, she can't imagine who she is. She can't think, I'm going to the river. There is just going to the river happening. Whereas humans begin this language, I'm going to the river, and then there becomes by default an I, me, I'm going to the river. And then as soon as you start speaking about that, then you're like, well, who is this I? And then the stories begin. Well, let me tell you who this I is. I'm a very nice person. I always share my food. I have never been a carnivore in my a cannibalist in my life. I would like to be your friend. I will not eat you when we're around the fire pit. So there goes the storytelling. As soon as we speak, we need a fundamental object in which objects are relating to. And then we forgot who we were. Humans forgot, because who we are is not in language. How many times have you heard a speaker say that? Who we are is not in language. It was there prior to what we speak. So obviously it cannot be spoken about. It's there beyond language. It's there prior to language. It's there without language. It's there when you've bumped your head and forgotten everything, when you can't speak, when you can't think, before birth, after death. It's there. It is there. So humans develop this language, and then there becomes a fixation on this language because we then try to be something. It becomes part of our survival. We sit around the campfire and we try to be the best human. We try to be the nicest human. We try to be the most lovable human. We try to be a human. So then this seeking for pleasure and avoiding pain starts. So then in Storyland, in this made up story of you, me, you then try to be better than me. You try to be better than me in a story. And you sit around the campfire and you passively aggressively play with each other, trying to convince each other that you are better, or that you're more victim, or whatever you value as higher. You are more kind. You are more this, you are more that. And even if you haven't got human counterparts to do that, if you're solo in the wood with no other humans, you'll begin to do it with the trees, with the ground, with the weather, with anything you can get your hands on. You'll be in relationship with the weather. Oh, blimey. You know what the wind did to me the other day? It blew off my hat and I had a whole cold head. Did you know? Oh, I did. So it's storytelling. We get lost in storytelling, and we get so lost in the story of who we are, so convinced by it, that we forget who we truly are. And who we truly are is so incredibly simple, because it's been what you've always been, obviously. So what is it in experiencing that you always are? My body. Well, one could beg to differ. Are you really always your body? And this is like where it becomes incredibly personal and non-personal, meaning it's then a journey inwards to discover that. Like, that's not something I can teach you. I can't tell you who you are, because you are who you are. So what is it that's always here in every circumstance? Now, when we have forgotten who we are, which is most of humanity, and believe that we are a story, you can understand why excessive thinking happens. That is understandable, because you're constantly in thinking. You're constantly in that area of the brain which is telling a story of you. So then there is excessive thinking, and also everything's become about you. If you're not always experiencing pleasure, then that means there's something wrong with you. If you are not a happy you, that means there's something wrong with you. If you're not better than your neighbor, that means there's something wrong with you. So this seeking for pleasure becomes so exacerbated. everything becomes about you, me. I must become something. I must grow this person into a super person. I must be the hero of the story. So always there is always this encouragement of thinking, of imagining. So rather than just being who you are, which is this moment, no thing and everything, total emptiness. Isn't that amazing? We are empty. Rather than being that, we are just lost. Our mind is on overdrive of thinking, trying to be the best version of you and trying to get as much pleasure as can and avoid pain. Because it believes that pleasure will bring you home, will bring you back to yourself. But pleasure will never bring you back to yourself. You will only find yourself here in this moment beyond pleasure and pain. Yeah. Yes. So excessive thinking happens because of a false identification with storytelling of you, that there is a you in relationship to the other. Yeah. So the only way out of that is remembering who you are. You know, I'm a fan of therapy, of working in yourself, of understanding yourself, of going really deep into the character and the stories that you tell yourself. Because the stories become ingrained in the body, in the movements, in the behavior, in the habits and the conditions. So I think it's beautiful to go in and explore that. And I think that's part of the process. But that is another story in the end. So this is going beyond stories in every moment. So what is here that is beyond stories? What might happen in the beginning phases or intermediate phases, depending on how you look at it, or very far advanced phases, is moving the attention, the personal awareness into itself or into the present moment. So coming back to the present moment. But then at some point, the present moment will just become evident without the person doing anything. And there will be a shift from a person experiencing to nothing experiencing. And the true nature of everything is absolute emptiness, nothing, not a thing. what's so beautiful about this message is it's without any bounds. It's freedom in every experience. It really is. So it's not talking about sorting out the flow of life or the flow of life looking a particular way. It's really an absolute surrender to everything that's happening in the flow. It's really freedom in Auschwitz, in prison, in an abusive relationship, in very stressful life situations, death of family members. It's really freedom in all of that. Sometimes in spirituality, there's an idea that if you're enlightened or awakened, then you only have perfect life circumstances. I personally don't believe that. I feel that life is a movement of good and bad. It has to be of opposites. To me, that's the way it seems. So there will be good things that happen and bad things that happen. And when you come to see who you truly are, then in a way, from the perspective of who you truly are, there is no good and bad. But yet seemingly good or bad things happen in the flow of things. So it could be a death of a family member or looking after a family member when they're dying. And it's all free. So it's not about events. The spiritual community love to compete about that. Like who's manifested the best? If you've not manifested something good, then you can't be liberated. Well, that's part of my karma. I'm wearing down my karma by manifesting this. And all of that has got relevance and some level of truth, and then it's all bullshit. In the end, freedom is here and life is a dance of colors. And sometimes those colors go in favor of the person and sometimes they don't. And in the end, the person is not going to win. Life is going to consume these bodies. And freedom is really a surrender to this moment, beyond experiencing. And who you are is totally empty and full simultaneously. And we could say consciousness if that's how you feel or that's what you relate to, but the consciousness, like some people call it a bridge, like it's a bridge between the emptiness and the fullness. But the consciousness is not a thing, it's totally empty. If you see consciousness as a thing, then you're missing it. It's not something you can recognize. But it's a great pointer to say consciousness. Yeah, I read this really beautiful quote by Amoda Maya. sorry, not very good with names. And it was just so beautiful. It was like in every moment, they're giving everything to him, everything to God, everything. It's like everything is of a service of that. This is, in a way, when speaking like that, it's like it becomes like a practice for the person until it's seen as not a practice. Like there can't be a practice for the person, but it's like this, it's this energy of in every moment action happens, and that is God. It's like giving it to God. Like everything you do, everything the other does, is the divine, and it's this constant recognition of this, remembering of this. But it's not like an imagined story remembering this, because then that's back in the story of you. It's so complex to speak about. Just as a side note, excessive thinking could actually also be a dysfunction of the brain. Like there could be like OCD, or you could have had a brain injury or something, or there could be mental health issues, and that could be excessive thinking. So, and that's something different. That's that the brain is misfiring and not working properly. But I'm speaking in those cases where that's not evident. I mean, for sure, people that have all of that and then are identified, the excessive thinking is exacerbated by identification, but it can also be a form of brain injury or mental health issues. Yeah, just to make that clear that it's not always the case that excessive thinking is coming because of identification. Yeah, yeah. So freaking relaxing and beautiful. This subject. It's really the only freedom. You won't find freedom in fixing yourself. This is a never-ending story. It will relax you to do therapy and fix yourself, but that tension that you feel, where you feel like you can't quite relax, that that is seeking, the separation. But you can get yourself into a really good space, you know, doing yoga and body work and understanding like why you're enacting certain things. This can get you into a really good space, but you'll always feel like a slight tension. And that's the seeking. That's the identification with the false self. When you're identified with the false self, you never quite feel like you're at home. You know, you're always, where is home? You're always feeling like you're out of home. This is home right here. Mind is where? You know, it's always got that agitation. Through understanding yourself, that will relax more and more and more. Like you know, when you're really unconscious, it's just so much seeking and so much thought processing and ideas and future thinking and avoidance and this is the problem, this is the problem, this is the problem, they're the problem, I'm the problem, he's the problem, she's the problem, the dog's the problem, the carpet's the problem, the gas heating's the problem, the world's the problem, the climate change's the problem. You know, it's never ending. The problem is separation. Even a lot of our social issues are to do with separation and self-hatred. Okay, so let's go some questions.